49 Stat 3097, Treaty Series 881, Conventions and Duties and Rights of the State in 1933 in December, that you people created. You put this country under international law. You stripped the states of all its state laws. I'm going to remind you of the International Organization of Immunities Act of 1945. You put this country under UN jurisdiction in 1945, but UN didn't come into 1946. How did you put it in a year ahead of time? You put us under international law a year ahead of time before UN had come about. I'm also going to sit down and remind you, you guys also created Title 22 CFR, Foreign Relations, your oath of office. Every one of your oath of office comes under Foreign Relations. Title 8, United States Code 1481. You relinquish your national citizenship. I was in the military. When I sit here and took my oath to the military, I was required to take one step forward. That step forward walked me out of my citizenship. I didn't know it at the time. I didn't understand it. I understand it now. I'm also going to sit down and remind you that that International Organization of Immunities Act of 1945 is still in full force and effect. Hillary, whenever Arizona brought charges against illegal aliens, Hillary brought charges in the UN against Arizona under the International Organization of Immunities Act, because these public offices are foreign nationals. You're foreign to the American people. I'm going to give you a brief history here. I'm going to remind you that in 1871, the District of Columbia, which is what we're sitting at right now, used to be the United States under Washington and Georgetown. You created the District of Columbia out of this. The moment you created the District of Columbia, you made a foreign territory. You made a federal division here. You lifted it off the land. And the proof of that is sitting in 77 American Jurisprudence 2D, Section 1, that sits there and says the United States is from the East Coast to the West Coast, from the north to the south. And whenever you turn around and you created the Act of 1871, you separated and you created the District of Columbia, which is a new seat of government, and you pulled it out of the United States. In 1925, you people incorporated the United States as a business. The proof of that is under Title 28, Chapter 176 of the State 3002. The United States government is a corporation with all instruments thereof. We don't have a government. We got CEOs sitting up here. These are all in your records. This isn't Rob Class bringing this in. These are in your records. My research team behind me have pulled up congressional records from across this country. This isn't one man doing this. This is a nation doing this. I'm just a spokesman for it. Why? Because I can put it together, and that's what I've done. I'm the one who's bringing it in before you. This is why we have corruption within the courts, because we're not dealing with the court. We're not dealing with the government. When I can get rulings that we don't have public officials, they're all private contractors. We did not hire private contractors. If we're private contractors, then we have no obligation to you whatsoever. None. This is where the problem lies. Do you work for us or don't you? Did we put you in office or did we not put you in office? The question now comes in is, how do we fix the problem? How do we address this problem? How do we get to 40% to the federal funding back to the political subdivision, which is what they're entitled to since 1966? You're talking trillions of dollars that's been embezzled. You're sitting here talking since 1933, roughly from that time period, you took the people's money. You forced the people into slavery. You sit here and stripped the people. Under the Alien Registration Act of 1940, that's where the birth certificate come in. That's where we had to register ourselves to the state. That's where the Social Security number come in. I want to tell you right now, you go back and look at your birth certificates and you'll find out that the state is a third party in this. Why? Because your mother turned us over to the state at birth. It has your father's name, it's got your mother's maiden name as given childbirth, And it was your mother's married name that turned the child over to the state. Now, why is there a distinct difference between the maiden name and the married name? Why do we have two different names on here? One giving birth and the other one giving the child over to the state. This is where the problem's coming in. The state's claiming ownership over the name. And when the people in the court are addressing this, the courts are sitting here laughing and making a joke out of it. Oh, you're one of them whack-out weirdos, but yet here's the law that sits here and says this is exactly what you did. And when we're walking into the courts are telling us you can't bring the law into this court. You can't address the law into this court. What did you bring charges on me on? You brought some statutory law against me and I can't use it to defend myself with? How are we supposed to sit here and defend? The issue comes back into this court. The judges are telling us we can't hear the law. So now what you're telling me is under the 11th Amendment of the Constitution, the court has no judicial power to hear any case in law and equity or commence prosecution against a United States citizen or citizen of the same state or citizen of a foreign state. So now the judges on the pro se side runs 11th Amendment on our side. On the prosecution side, they run Article 3, Section 2. The judicial power shall extend to all these cases under the Constitution and the laws of the land and under admiralty and maritime and ambassadors and controversies. You allow the prosecution to bring it in, but the courts are throwing us under the 11th Amendment. Or are you throwing this under the fact of state of emergency where all laws are suspended? Now I'm going to sit here and remind you people of something. Under rules of engagement, under that labor code, there is a means that you have to operate under military law. Under UCMJ Title 10, 333, sits here and says, you cannot interfere with federal and state statutes or constitutional protected rights. These are your regulations. Everybody makes the issue that that flag in that courtroom is an admiralty flag. No, sir, that flag is not an admiralty flag. That is a presidential flag under Dwight D. Eisenhower under his executive order. He created that flag. It also comes under Army Regulations 840-10 under 8.1, 8.2. That eagle is a presidential flag. Those fringes is an administrative flag. These courts are operating under administration. And that American flag that sits over for the state has the spike on it. That's the district for the federal district for the military. That shows that these courts are operating under military jurisdiction. And the other issue of it is, who is bringing claims against the American people? You and I aren't, American people ain't bringing each other in. It is always the state of bringing us in. It's always the United States bringing charges in the federal. So I'm going to tell you right now, the United States can't bring charges. The United States doesn't exist. Why? Because the United States sits in the 10 square miles of this District of Columbia. And the proof of that, look at your border rocks that has been laid out around here, at least a plot out of your 10 square miles. It says United States on the inside, it says Virginia on the outside, it says Maryland on the outside. This is the United States within the 10 square miles. There's never a harm done here. The problem we're running into is bringing in the wrong plaintiffs into these courtrooms. It's always the state of. You're not bringing in a real victim. And how you're doing it, you're bringing it back in under Title 50. You're bringing it back in under Chapter 3, Section 23, jurisdiction of the court. You're bringing it in under the Trading with the Enemy Act. And that's how you're charging the American people in this country. We have a very serious issue, ladies and gentlemen. And the issue is, how do we address it? I'm sitting here telling you what they're doing wrong. What are you going to do about it as Congress? You have the duty, because the people appointed you. You are under the bankruptcy. This is what Traffica said here and said. Congress is the fiduciary trustees. You guys are trustees over this. You are the guardians over this. Or is it the fact that we have a problem here, and the reason why you guys aren't doing anything is because you really don't exist either since 1860. Because in 1860, the South and the North split. You went side-eye. 1867, you guys created the Reconstruction Act on the North side, and you forced the South into submission under the Reconstruction Act, because now you forced them to take on the 14th Amendment, Section 4 citizenship.